Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We turn now to one of Emily's most famous, especially early poems, poem 185, Faith is a Fine Invention. And unlike any other previous lecture, I want to just read these four poems. Hey, do you guys remember that we've already mentioned that in poem 1063, Emily says, ashes denote that fire was, as a way to think about these short poems. These four lines have been the subject of tremendous discussion and debate. I'm hopeful that we can join it here. Faith is a fine invention when gentlemen can see, but microscopes are prudent in an emergency. Now, there's two different ways scholars have read this poem. Some have seen this as epistemological fallibilism and will assume a few things here, namely that you've been following our stuff, Chats with Emily, our playlist, at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, hopefully you've already been exposed to our set of introductory comments. We talked about our big five: epistemology, what you can know; ontology, who you are; psychology, what the individual mind can know; sociology, the study of collective mind; and then finally, the question of theodicy, why must there be pain and suffering in this world? No doubt this poem can be read at the epistemological level, and we've commented on her fallibilist, what she'll call later a nimble theology or faith. But this poem has to be as well understood in the context that it was shared with Sam Boyles. We've commented on him a number of times already. And in letter 220, this set of lines is actually couched where she'll say it this way in letter 220. You spoke of the East. I have thought about it this winter. Don't you think that you and I should be shrewder to take the mountain road? That bare-headed life under the grass worries one like a wasp. The rose is for Mary. This bare-headed life will take us back to poem 166 with Barefoot Estate. There is a whole line of thought that says that this poem is actually not about theology. It's not about epistemology at all. It's actually about Emily's desire to have Sam Boyles see her poetry as worthy of publishing. Now, the poem, of course, can also be read at the theological level, and if you've read, and our assumption is that you've read all previous 184 poems we just finished with the transport, if you've done that, you know that Emily is often creating a certain kind of tension between what she knows and what she wishes that she could know. There's no question that Emily has a love of concrete fact, and in that regards, this poem definitely can be read as a critique of theology and the neglecting of the evidences of science. We'll pay attention to that. And when we're finished, we're going to look at poems 1338 and 1144 to get a sense of this nimble-like fallibilist position that she will often hold. Now, don't forget, Emily is at Amherst Academy with Edward Hitchcock, and Hitchcock will have taught Emily the power of trying to join science and theology together. Notice the poem begins with quotation marks around the word faith. In 48 poems, faith or its derivatives will be used. This was a concern of Emily's, clearly. She tells stories in her own letter writing and the like, of sitting at a religious gathering and hearing the call for conversion experience, and others around her having these conversion experiences, and she never can quite get there. This is, I think, significant in her use of the word faith. She could just be talking about belief in her poetics, no doubt. Notice her use of the word fine, and it is a bit ironic because it precedes the word invention. Faith is a fine invention. Now, of course, the word invention has been read as mechanical. Some will see it as mythical. In other words, fine. We make up these stories. Faith is something that's made up when gentlemen can see. Now, in her original manuscript, this word see is underlined, and I think it has a lot to do with what we've already said, that word from our study of Plato's Republic at learnstrong.net, full lectures on Republic, that notion of perspicacity. Go back to Republic 7, the cave allegory, for example, where those individuals are sitting in a cave looking at shadows on a wall thinking that they are real. It's not that the shadows don't exist, it's just the argument is they're not real. And when one is finally emancipated from one's chains, and one is able to touch the wall of the cave, one is able to see, oh, that's not real, shadows aren't real. They're created by a little fire back behind and people walking to and fro, and now one is dragged out into the light of the sun, and now one can actually see. Now, for Emily, that word picture is foundational, I believe, to a lot of the poems, especially one like this, when she uses the word see. In other words, what can actually be understood? Well, she says faith is a fine invention when gentlemen can see. In other words, when there's a certain understanding of the way life is provided for us vis-a-vis our faith, our stories, our theologies, and the like. But, and again, the word but here is central, microscopes are prudent. Notice how we go from fine to prudent. In an emergency. Now, does she mean by prudent better? Many are going to read it that way. And when she says microscopes, is she speaking now about the need for a spiritual microscope of a kind? Again, there's been a lot of debate about what exactly it is that Emily is saying. Let's go ahead and work now at 2a to try and see if we can figure it out. Well, I think one argument that she's making is that faith or theology can only take an individual so far. Now, if you read this poem within the context of the Sam Boyle's letter, as we've commented on in 220, then it may be more apropos to say that the message here is there's always a longing for the artist to be really seen, to be microscopically seen, to be understood. And I think it is possible that she's saying to Sam Boyles, if you really would look at my poetry closer, then you would see its true value, as opposed to just blind faith, to speak in now Kierkegaardian language. And no doubt, Kierkegaard will come to mind at 3a for us. At 2b, I think one of the, rhetorically speaking, one of the powers of this poem is its tone. Is it flippant? Is it mocking? Is it desperate? I mean, depending on how you read this, it's a fascinating... Her word choice here, especially of faith and microscope, is and fine and prudent. I think all of that will give rise to any number of possible interpretations. At 3a, well, you can't help but read a poem like this and think of everything from St. Augustine to, of course, Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica. And we've given lectures on all of that at learnstrong.net. But there's two poems by Emily we're going to study later that are going to bring us back to this set of lines. The first of those is poem 1338. Her use of the word nimble. What tentaments of clover are fitting for the bee? What edifices azure for butterflies and me? What residences nimble arise and events, without a rhythmic rumor or an assaulting guess? Now, her notion here of nimble and guessing will lead us to this fallibilist position that we've commented on already. Remember, epistemologically speaking, you have three options. You can be absolutely certain that what you think you know is 100% true. Of course, the problem with that is lots of terrible things have happened because people are 100% absolutely convinced. Of course, the complete opposite of that position is the relativist position that says there are no absolutes, there is no truth, which seems to posit a truth. That is, the performative contradiction invalidates extreme relative positions epistemologically. Well then, what is a third place? Well, it's Emily's place. It's the place of science. It's the place of the fallibilist. It says about any epistemological position that you might hold, I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. It's that I could be wrong that Emily is playing with. And when we get to poem 1144, we'll enjoy this one as well in our study later. Ourselves we do inter with sweet derision. The channel of the dust who once achieves invalidates the balm of that religion that doubts as fervently as it believes. Now, hear that line. Her theology is one that doubts as fervently as it believes. You could make the argument at 3a that really that's what her goal is. Now, of course, the question has always been, is that really what Aquinas was trying to do in Summa Theologica. Finally, at 3b, how do you think about religion, about theology, about faith, as it relates to this war, can I use that word, contest with science? How do you put those two things side by side? How can you appreciate them? Emily, I think, very much challenging us with 4 lines, which, of course, we love. Thank you.